Stop what you are doing right now. That sudden distance between you and someone you trusted, it is not random, and you are not imagining the shift. You felt it, didn't you? The energy changed before the words disappeared. Conversations that once flowed now feel forced, delayed, or completely silent. And what hurts the most is not even the absence. It is the confusion, the not knowing why, the replaying of every moment in your mind, wondering if you said something wrong, if you became too much, or maybe not enough. Chosen one, that weight in your chest right now is real. That quiet grief you cannot fully explain, it is valid. Because you are not just mourning a person, you are mourning the version of connection you thought would last. And silence can feel louder than rejection. It echoes. It lingers. It makes you question your worth in ways direct words never could. But listen carefully. This is where most people betray themselves. They rush to fill the silence. They chase clarity. They beg for closure. Because the human heart is not designed to sit comfortably in the unknown. And yet here you are sitting in it, feeling every second stretch, wondering why someone who once felt aligned now feels like a stranger. This is not easy. This is not light. This is not something you can just brush off and pretend doesn't affect you. It does, and it's supposed to, because what you are experiencing right now is not just distance, it is detachment in motion. And your spirit recognizes it before your mind can make sense of it. You are not crazy for feeling this deeply. You are aware, and awareness comes with a cost. Chosen one, do not click away from this moment. What you are experiencing right now is not just emotional confusion. It is a precise interruption. And if you leave before you understand it, you risk misreading what heaven is trying to show you. Because there is a reason this door had to close the way it did. Not with explanation, not with closure, but with silence. And in the next few minutes, you are going to see exactly why it could not happen any other way. There is an instruction hidden inside this distance. A strategy, a protection, but it is subtle. And if you are not paying attention, you will override it with emotion. You will reach out. You will try to revive something that was already being removed for your sake. Stay with me, because what feels like rejection is actually timing. What feels like loss is actually alignment in disguise. And what you are about to understand will change the way you respond to every silent exit from this point forward. If you miss this, you will repeat it. If you understand this, you will break the pattern. So stay. Listen closely. Because the silence you are sitting in right now is not empty. It is speaking. Chosen one, before we go any deeper, this is your moment of alignment. If you can feel that this message is speaking directly to your situation, if something inside you is already confirming that this distance is not random, then act on it right now. Take 1 second and like this video, not for the algorithm, but as a signal, as a quiet agreement between you and God that you are choosing protection over confusion, that you are willing to see what is really happening, even if it challenges what you feel. Because every time you consciously agree with truth, you strengthen your awareness. You step out of emotional reaction and into spiritual clarity. And that shift, that is where your power begins to return. And if this moment feels bigger than you expected, if you can sense that you are in a transition you don't fully understand, I've prepared something for you. A guide designed specifically for chosen ones navigating seasons like this. It walks you through how to handle silence, how to detach without losing yourself, and how to recognize when God is removing people versus when you are meant to fight for connection. It is not just information, it is instruction for your next level. You will find it in the description. Now stay with me, because what is really happening behind this distance is deeper than you think. Chosen one, you have been interpreting this loss through the wrong lens. You saw distance and called it rejection. You felt silence and assumed disconnection. But what if none of that is true? What if what you are witnessing is not something breaking, but something elevating? Because that is what this really is. Elevation. And elevation always comes with separation. You are being lifted into a space where your thinking is sharper, your awareness is deeper, your spirit is more sensitive. And not everyone can go there with you. Not because they are bad, not because they are against you, but because they are not built for that altitude. Think about it. When you rise higher, the air changes. It becomes thinner. It requires stronger lungs to breathe, to function, to remain stable. And the same is true spiritually. The level you are stepping into demands a different capacity, a different alignment, a different kind of presence. The people who are fading, they simply cannot breathe where you are going. And that is not an insult. That is not judgment. That is design. They were real in the season you shared. The laughter was real. The connection was real. The memories, they were not fake. But seasons have expiration dates, and alignment has conditions. And what once matched you no longer does. You have outgrown the version of yourself that could exist comfortably in that dynamic. And because of that, the dynamic itself must dissolve. Not violently, not dramatically, but quietly, naturally, almost mysteriously. That is why there is no clear explanation. Because this is not a conflict that can be solved with words. It is a shift that can only be understood through awareness. If they tried to explain it, it would not make sense. If you tried to fix it, it would not hold. Because the issue is not behavior, it is frequency. And frequency does not negotiate. It aligns or it separates. Chosen one, you are not being left behind. You are being moved forward. And forward movement often feels like loss when you are still emotionally attached to what is behind you. That is the tension you feel right now. Not rejection, but transition. Not abandonment, but redirection. There are conversations you are having that no longer serve who you are becoming. There are habits within that connection that subtly pulled you back into old patterns. Ways of thinking, reacting, even speaking that belonged to a previous version of you. And you felt it, didn't you? Even before the distance happened. That slight discomfort. That subtle misalignment. Moments where you were present physically, but internally, something felt off. Like you were shrinking yourself just enough to maintain harmony. Like you were adjusting your truth to keep the connection stable. That was the signal. Not that something was wrong with them, but that something had changed within you. And when that internal shift happens, your external world must respond. It has to reorganize. It has to filter. It has to release what no longer fits the frequency you are stepping into. This is not punishment. This is precision. God is not removing people because you failed. He is removing them because you are ready. Ready for conversations that expand you instead of limit you. Ready for connections that reflect your growth instead of resist it. Ready for an environment where you do not have to dilute your awareness just to feel accepted. And here is the part that most people struggle with. You are not meant to chase what is being released. Because the moment you chase it, you lower yourself back into the frequency you just outgrew. You reconnect with a version of yourself that is no longer aligned. You interrupt the elevation that was already in motion. That is why the silence feels so uncomfortable. Because it is forcing you to choose. Will you honor the shift, or will you resist it? Will you trust the elevation, or will you try to return to familiarity? Chosen one, this is not about them. It was never about them. It is about who you are becoming, and becoming requires space. Space that cannot exist if you are constantly holding on to connections that were only meant for a previous chapter. So instead of asking, why did they pull away? Ask yourself, what level am I being prepared for? Because once you understand that, everything changes. The silence stops feeling like rejection and starts feeling like protection. Chosen one, let's go deeper. Because what you thought was connection was quietly becoming depletion. It didn't look toxic. It didn't feel obviously wrong. There were no dramatic arguments, no clear betrayal, no single moment you could point to and say, this is where it broke. That's what made it so difficult to recognize. Because the drain you were experiencing was subtle, quiet, gradual, but it was real. Every interaction carried a hidden cost. Not always visible in the moment, but undeniable afterward. You would leave conversations feeling slightly heavier than before. Your mind would start racing, overanalyzing simple exchanges. Your energy would dip without explanation. And sometimes you couldn't even focus on what truly mattered to you anymore. That was not coincidence. That was misalignment taking a toll. Because when a connection no longer matches your frequency, maintaining it requires effort that goes against your natural state. You begin to adjust unconsciously. You start choosing words more carefully, not from authenticity, but from preservation. You hold back certain thoughts. You dilute your perspective. You become smaller, just enough to keep the connection functioning. And that's shrinking. It costs energy. Not loud energy, not explosive energy, but a constant, quiet output that drains your inner reserve. Like a device running too many background processes, you still function, but you are not operating at full power. That is what was happening to you. Your attention was divided. Your emotional bandwidth was being consumed. Your clarity was being interrupted. And all of it was happening beneath your awareness, disguised as normal interaction. Chosen one, energy does not lie. Even when your mind tries to justify, your body always registers the truth. Think back for a moment. How often did you feel truly energized after engaging with them? Not entertained, not distracted, but genuinely uplifted, expanded, and clear. And now compare that to how often you felt slightly off, slightly tense, slightly drained. That imbalance was the signal. But you stayed. You stayed because of history, because of shared memories, because of loyalty to what once was. You told yourself, it's just a phase, or maybe I'm overthinking. You gave the connection the benefit of the doubt again and again. And in doing so, you kept investing. Time, attention, emotional presence. You kept pouring into something that no longer had the capacity to hold what you were becoming. And that is where the real exhaustion began. Not just in the interaction, but in the effort to sustain it. Because sustaining misalignment is one of the most draining things a soul can do. It requires you to override your intuition repeatedly, to silence that inner voice that keeps whispering, "This no longer fits," to convince yourself that stability is more important than truth. And every time you ignored that voice, you lost a little more of your energy, a little more of your clarity, a little more of your alignment. Chosen one, this is why the distance feels so sudden. Because you were not meant to slowly detach while still leaking energy. That would have kept you in the cycle longer. That would have prolonged the drain. So instead it was cut. Not to hurt you, but to stop the loss. Because as long as the connection remained active, you would have continued giving. You would have kept showing up, even when it no longer nourished you. You would have kept trying to revive something that was already energetically complete. And that effort would have cost you your next level. It would have distracted you from your purpose. Because when your energy is tied to maintaining something misaligned, you have less capacity to build what is truly meant for you. Your focus becomes fragmented. Your progress becomes slower. Your vision becomes clouded. And over time, you don't even realize how far you've drifted from your own path. That is the danger of energy drain. It doesn't destroy you instantly. It delays you quietly. But now the leak has been exposed. And more importantly, it has been sealed. The silence you are experiencing is not emptiness. It is restoration. It is the space where your energy begins to return to you, where your thoughts become clear again, where your spirit no longer has to compensate for misalignment. Yes, it feels uncomfortable, because you were to that connection being part of your daily rhythm. You were used to that exchange, even if it was draining you. But discomfort is not always a sign of loss. Sometimes, it is a sign that something unnatural has finally stopped. Chosen one, you were not meant to carry that energetic weight into your next season. You were not meant to keep investing in something that required you to diminish yourself just to maintain it. You were meant to operate in clarity, in peace, in full alignment. And that cannot happen while you are still leaking energy into places that no longer match you. So what feels like something being taken away is actually something being returned. Your energy, your focus, yourself. Chosen one, now we arrive at the part most people try to avoid, because this is not about them anymore. This is about you. Beneath the confusion, beneath the pain, beneath the questions, there was an agreement. A silent one you may not have spoken out loud, but you lived it. The agreement to stay, even when you felt the shift. The agreement to hold on, even when your spirit was outgrowing the space. The agreement to choose what is familiar over what is truly aligned. And that agreement was rooted in something deeper than connection. It was rooted in fear. Not loud fear, not obvious fear, but a quiet, persistent fear that whispered, "What happens if you let this go?" Because letting go does not just mean losing a person. It means facing space. It means stepping into the unknown. It means standing alone without the comfort of what you are used to. And for many, that feels terrifying. So instead, you compromise. You stay connected to what feels known, even if it no longer feels right. You choose familiar discomfort over unfamiliar freedom. And that is the hidden trap. Chosen one, you were not just holding on to them. You were holding on to a version of yourself that felt safer inside that connection. A version of you that did not have to fully step into your power. A version of you that could remain slightly hidden, slightly adjusted, slightly contained. Because full alignment requires full exposure. It requires you to stand in who you are without dilution, without shrinking, without relying on external validation to feel stable. And that level of self-positioning can feel overwhelming when you are not used to it. So the mind creates a compromise. Stay here. It's not perfect, but it's safe. But safe is not the same as aligned. And deep down you knew that. You felt that tension every time you ignored your intuition. Every time you silenced that inner voice telling you something had changed. Every time you chose to maintain the connection instead of honoring the shift. That was the agreement being reinforced. Until now. Because this distance you are experiencing, it broke that agreement. Not by your decision, but by design. It removed your ability to stay in that familiar space. It took away the option to keep choosing comfort over growth. It forced you into a position where you can no longer rely on that connection to define your emotional stability. And that is where the real work begins. Because now, you are standing face to face with yourself. Without distraction, without emotional buffering, without that presence filling the gaps. And yes, it feels uncomfortable. It feels quiet in a way that almost echoes. It feels empty in a way that makes you want to reach out, to reconnect, to restore what was. But look deeper. Is it really them you miss? Or is it the feeling of not being alone? Is it really the connection? Or is it the comfort it provided? Chosen one, this is the moment where your identity begins to shift. Because you are no longer being supported by what is familiar. You are being called to stand in alignment, even when it feels like isolation. And that is not punishment. That is preparation. Preparation to become someone who does not choose based on fear. Someone who does not stay where they are no longer aligned just to avoid temporary loneliness. Someone who can stand fully in their truth, even if it means standing alone for a season. Because you are not actually alone. You are being repositioned. And the fear you feel right now, it is not a sign to go back. It is a sign that you are stepping beyond the limits of who you used to be. Chosen one, this is where you stop questioning and start declaring. Not from emotion, not from pain, but from alignment. Close your eyes for a moment and feel what is still trying to hold on. Not the person, but the attachment, the memory, the pull that keeps reaching back into what has already been released. Now listen carefully and repeat this within yourself. Let every word land. Let every word cut what needs to be cut and free what needs to be freed. I release this connection with love, not because it was meaningless, but because its purpose has been fulfilled. I honor what was without forcing what no longer is. I choose alignment over attachment, truth over familiarity, growth over comfort. I no longer chase what is being removed from my life. I no longer beg for clarity where silence has already spoken. I trust that what is leaving is making space for what is truly meant for me. I call my energy back from every conversation, every memory, every moment where I gave more than I received. My energy returns to me, cleansed, restored, and whole. I cut every unseen tie that keeps me emotionally bound to what I have outgrown. Not in anger, but in awareness. Not in resentment, but in peace. I am no longer available for connections that require me to shrink, to question myself, or to abandon my alignment. I stand fully in who I am becoming, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it feels like solitude, because I know this space is not empty. It is being prepared for people who see me clearly, who meet me fully, who align with my growth instead of resisting it. I welcome those connections now, without fear, without doubt, without hesitation. Chosen one, take a breath and feel the shift. This is what release feels like. Not loud, not dramatic, but clean, clear, final. The door did not close to punish you. It closed because you are no longer the person who needed it open. And from this moment forward, you do not look back. You move, you rise, you become.